something that everybody has to know in order to begin drawing in CorelDRAW, and that is how to use the drawing tools. So in this page we're going to be looking at rectangles, circles, and polygons, which are three of your very basic shapes. We'll start off with your rectangle tool. That's over here in the toolbox in the left-hand side of your screen. So if I click on the rectangle tool, you can see that I have my shape drawing pointer, that's the open crosshair, with a small rectangle in the bottom right-hand corner to indicate that's the tool I'm working with. And I can click and drag a rectangle, and a rectangle is defined simply by 4 right angles and 4 sides, opposite sides being equal. Or I can hold down the Control key on my keyboard while I draw, and that constrains, and I'm going to say this for the first time, but you'll hear it over and over again, Control constrains. So when I hold down the Control key, it constrains all 4 sides to be equal, and now I have the shape that we know as a square. And one other thing I'd like to point out to you about drawing rectangles is that if you switch back to your shape tool, you can edit the nodes in a very predefined way to round the corners of that rectangle. Now let's take a look at drawing circles. If I go over here and grab my ellipse tool, in a similar way that the rectangle and the perfect square are two different shapes, I can draw an ellipse, something that is not perfectly round, or I can hold down the Control key, yes indeed, Control key, Control constrains, and I get a perfect circle. What I can show you about drawing circles is found up here in the property bar. You'll see that we have 3 different types of circles. I have an ellipse, which I've just drawn, either a perfect circle or an oval. I can create a pie by changing modes here, and you'll see it took a byte out. And now if I want to edit those nodes, just grab my shape tool, and I can edit those nodes to increase or decrease the size of my pie. And I can create an arc. The difference between an arc and a pie is the fill and the closed object. An arc is not closed, as you see there, and a pie is closed, which means it can hold a fill color. The arc does not hold a fill color. Now let's switch back to our pick tool and go over here and we'll look at the polygons. The polygon tool you'll find in this flyout menu. It shares space with the graph paper tool and the spiral tool. Let me select the polygon tool. And by default, I click and drag out a 5-sided polygon. It has 5 points marking its corners. I can change that. I can decrease the number to 4 or a minimum of 3 because, as anybody who studied math knows, the definition of a polygon is a 3 or more sided object. And I can take the number of sides up as high as I want, up to a maximum of 500 sides. When it reaches 500, Draw says, okay, that's enough. And honestly, once you get up to around 100, it starts to look so much like a circle it's indistinguishable. Now there are differences, but nothing that we're going to talk about here. Let's keep it down to, say, 16 points, and we'll reduce that maybe down to a noticeable, there we are, an 8-sided object. So now we have our typical stop sign shape. And you can draw polygons using the Control key as well to constrain the lengths of the sides to be equal. And since I've done a little editing with each of these other shapes, let me go back to my shape tool. And what happens with the polygon, when you grab any one of the nodes, you get every one of its opposing nodes coming with you to edit that shape. So I can create a star shape, and if I hold down Control, I'll get a nice symmetrical star here. And if you have more than 5 sides, it gets very interesting. As you edit these, you end up with a very fun-looking, almost spirograph set behavior. And we'll look at more of that in the advanced video as we explore these shapes fully.